Dr Rassie Erasmus wants to move the Rugby Championship to a different time in the calendar. And I agree with the good doctor. In this episode, you are going to get a front row seat to exactly what Rassie said. Doc is proposing that the Rugby Championship, which currently takes place between August and October, more or less every year, be moved to an earlier date in the calendar. Erasmus reckons it should take place at the same time as the Six Nations. So we could then have Springbok tests against the All Blacks, Australia or Argentina as early as January, but certainly February and March, and sometimes even as late as April. Here's what Rassie said. I think it would have sorted out a lot of problems, player load and injury-wise. With the URC and European Cup, it would definitely free up a lot of weeks for us. Solid stuff. Oh, and Rassie also said if you're enjoying this video, you should smash that super thanks button harder than the Springboks hit a ruck. It's that little heart with the $sign inside of it. You get to drop a highlighted comment and toss a small donation my way. Think of it as buying me a coffee or an overpriced blue label luxury. I'll reply and slap a heart on your comment. Promise. Guys, super thanks is my ticket to doing this full time instead of, I don't know, selling my rugby boots on eBay. Plus, I've got big dreams. I want to hit Australia in 2027 and cover the Rugby World Cup for you with daily updates from down under. Flights are not cheap and I'm not swimming there. Donations start at just $1. That's US dollars, not Zim dollars, because I'd need a wheelbarrow for those. Help a guy out. Now, unsurprisingly, I'm with Rassie on this one, but I'm also with him on his Rugby Championship suggestion. Because, well, two words: global calendar. Currently, every rugby nation on earth has a clear rugby season and off-season. Springbok players have no off-season at all. From January to May, June, our players are involved in the URC and or Champions Cup. Then they get together for Springbok camps before playing a test series in late June or early July into the middle of that month. A few weeks later, the Boks begin the Rugby Championship, and that runs into October. Now, by that point, the new URC and Champions Cup seasons have already started. South African players not involved with the Springboks at least get half of June and the month of July off. Now, yes, I know that the rest period isn't very long because it's not long before they start pre-season training again anyway, but at least there is a rest period. I'm also aware that there is a mandated resting period for the Springboks, and you can also speak about the Currie Cup and where that fits into the calendar, and now sometimes that bleeds into June and July and August and all these sorts of things. But I think you understand the point that I'm trying to make here, and the bottom line is that this lack of a rest period for our Springboks in particular, it is incredibly disruptive. And not only the lack of a rest period, but the mandated rest period that could randomly take place at any moment in the season. Let's use an example. Let's say Damian Willemse, and I know that he's currently injured, but we're speaking hypothetically here, okay? The Stormers need to beat whoever, pick a team, Connacht. The Stormers need to beat Connacht in the last game of the URC in order to qualify for the quarterfinals. John Dobson would love to have Damian Willemse in his team, but Damian is currently in his mandated rest period. Do you see what I say when I'm saying that this is incredibly disruptive? It falls randomly, as I say, and it wreaks havoc with what the URC coaches are trying to do. Now, that's okay if we don't care about how our franchises fare. But I think I speak for all of us when I say I want all 4 of our teams to qualify for the Champions Cup every year. And then hopefully at least 3 of them can get to the last 16, a minimum of 2 reach the quarterfinals, and at least we have a semi-finalist. It hasn't happened yet, I grant you, but the time will come when our teams can challenge for the title, I believe. But probably not just right now. Nevertheless, moving the Rugby Championship to the beginning of the year would also kill the World Rugby Test window in August, September and October. European clubs hate that test window. Why? Because it disrupts their season. The powerful French clubs in particular get annoyed by this every year. And, whether we like it or not, they are the guys with the money. It's almost like in football. In fact, let me use a cricket example. Let's say you want your cricketer to play for Western Province, KwaZulu-Natal, Northerns, whatever the case may be. But that player is now needed by the IPL. Well, what are you going to do? But imagine if it was the other way around. Imagine the IPL, Indian Premier League, if you're not familiar, the most powerful franchises in world cricket. Imagine if they couldn't get hold of one of their players because that player was playing a match for the Proteas, or England, Australia, Pakistan, whatever. I know Pakistanis don't play in the IPL, but whatever the case may be. You can see how this creates, let's just say, tension. And so if you kill that August, September, October test window in World Rugby, and you move the Rugby Championship to Jan, Feb, March, give or take, I think it's an easy win. World Rugby needs a global calendar in any event, and this is an easy way to make it happen. Okay, sure, it will disrupt Super Rugby, but that can easily move to a different time of year. It could take place in the time that is currently reserved for the Rugby Championship, for example. It wouldn't cause any disruptions to national teams or what they call club versus country controversies. And it would not cause disruptions to international rugby. I think that's the key phrase there. Now, there might be a concern surrounding fixture congestion. So here's a look at what a hypothetical Rugby Championship fixture list would look like if they were playing this weekend at the same time as the Six Nations. So these are all South African times, by the way. At 9:35, we have New Zealand versus the Springboks. 12 o'clock, the Wallabies host Argentina. Then at 5:15, Ireland host France. Well, we already know France won that match. And at 20:45 or 8:45, Scotland versus Wales. England and Italy play each other on Sunday. Now that's an easy solution. But what if the Boks and Los Pumas were hosting? Okay, well, consider this then. We move Ireland and France to the Friday night, hardly unprecedented. On Saturday at 1800, South Africa hosts the All Blacks. 8:45 or 20:45, it's still Scotland versus Wales. And then at around midnight, maybe a tad earlier, the Argentines host the Aussies. Could even be a little bit later if you factor in the more favourable time zone for the Australians. England and Italy stay where they are. See, it's very doable. And for what it's worth, you can add Fiji, Samoa, Japan and others to the list. And this is what it looks like in November during the Autumn Nations series. So it's not unprecedented and it's hardly disruptive. And it's hardly causing chaos in terms of fixture congestion. And if you're a rugby nut, and I know you are, you're getting a bonanza of rugby. What's not to like? Plus, crucially, this will provide our Springboks with an obvious off-season resting period in the middle of the year, June, July, right? Because let's face it, the current model just is not sustainable. Something is going to have to give. By the way, speaking of the Six Nations, Rassie was also asked about the possibility of the Boks joining that competition in a potential 7 nations. Here's what Doc said. Us joining the Six Nations, I'm not sure how that sits with other people. We admire the competition, and when I was at Munster, I realized how big it is. For me, having been there for 18 months or so, I'm not sure if the Six Nations and Northern Hemisphere would want us there. There are a lot of traditions that are a little bit more valuable than us just fitting in and thinking we can just go into a competition that has a hell of a lot of heritage. So I'm not sure what the answer is there. time will tell. I'm of the opinion that with the introduction of old school tours between South Africa and New Zealand, the new Nations Championship and shortened Rugby Championship competitions going forward, I see a scenario where the Rugby Championship could even fall away. Rassie's proposal could actually go a long way towards saving the tournament, or at least preserve it for another decade or so. Otherwise, it could die altogether. And then, from our point of view, we could very well go north. But as a famous South African politician once said, we'll double-cross that bridge when we get there. What's your take? Would you like to see the Rugby Championship move to earlier in the year to help ensure our Springboks have a guaranteed off-season? Or do you have an alternative proposal? Let me know in the comment section down below. And if you have enjoyed this video and you enjoy my content, why not click on the like button down there? Or you know what you can do? You can crock roll the like button. You can also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. And I'd love it if you'd go and check out some of my other videos. May I recommend an interview I did with 2007 Rugby World Cup winning team manager for the Springboks, Zola Yeye. Since we're talking about the Boks, you know what? A lot of people said that this man was unqualified for the job. In fact, he was actually overqualified for the job, and he shares with me how he dealt with the Frans Steyn biting incident, the Skalk Burger incident, and also how President Thabo Mbeki wanted to discipline the Springboks despite winning the tournament. Check out that video. It's over here on your screen right now. And since we're talking about the future, why not check out my most recent video about the strides the junior Springboks are making ahead of this year's Under-20 World Championship. That video is over here. And I look forward to speaking to you next time.